Welcome back. So, when we left off, Avril and Dr. Weatherby, Avril and Dr. Weatherby were escaping from Gargoyle Manor. And we still don't know what's going on with the clones, but there is a copy of Avril on the loose somewhere. So let's see what happens. Chapter 15 is called Home Sweet Home. Lady Avril, 'tis truly thee! Bonaparte hurtled down the corridor and flung himself up upon the short, fat, bald, white-coated figure. So much has occurred since last we saw thee. What excitement, what adventure, what stew! Good to see you too, Bonaparte. Good to see all of you. Avril? Eddie took one step forward. Is it really you? Of course it's me, she beamed. Who else would it be? My evil twin or something? She guffawed with laughter. But Eddie was confused. Now that Avril was actually here in front of them, it did not feel the way she had imagined that it would. She did not know why she was not running and hugging her like Boney was. How did you know we were here? Was all she could say. Maternal instinct, came the smooth reply. Now, are we all ready to go? I'm taking you to my vacation cottage in the woods. We're going to live there now. It's much nicer than Retchford. She reached down and picked Augustus up. Standing some distance away, Lionel coughed. Lionel, of course. Eddie pulled him forward and held onto his hand, not wanting to let go. You must meet Lionel. He's been wonderful to us, Avril. He saved our lives and everything. Enchanted, Lionel began, extending his free hand, but she merely turned away. We really must hurry. She gave Bonaparte a shove in the direction of the doors. It's very late. My car is just outside. Coming along, Eddie? You'd better go, said Lionel, removing his hand from Eddie's grip. I suppose so. I'll be fine. Lionel gave her a gentle push. You're with Avril now. Eddie! Came the shout down the hallway. You called me Edna before, Eddie said, and she caught up with the others. She looked at the oddly unfamiliar, round pink face, which did not look down at her. After your train set? Great, a ride in a sports car. Augustus remembered what Avril had said about her car. He wriggled happily in her arms as Bonaparte reached over to tie his long ears up into a convertible-ready knot on the top of his head. I'm so glad you found us, dear Avril, he said. This is much more like it. But what about Lionel? Eddie tried to turn around as they were marched onward. Lionel was staring after them, bewildered. Oh, don't worry about him. You can invite him over. He really must come and visit. Goodbye, Lionel called. Lionel, we'll call you. Eddie only had time to glimpse his sad, tired face before the door shut behind them. The winter darkness enveloped them as they emerged into the playground. There were only 3 cars in the small parking area, Lionel's yellow Mini, a rusty blue Ford, and a sparkling clean, small white van. Where's yours? Augustus glanced around. They were led toward the white van. The back door opened with the touch of a button. Get in. But you said yours was a little green convertible, Eddie spoke up, even before Augustus's jaw dropped. I only use that for special occasions. Besides, there wouldn't be room for all 3 of you. It's really comfortable in here, lots of room to spread out. She beamed again. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. And it's only a short ride to the cottage. There'll be grilled cheese waiting when we get there. We'd better get in, Boney. Eddie grabbed his hand and began to help him into the back of the van. Bonaparte was curious to discover if grilled cheese was as good as stew. They hauled Augustus, who was still too shocked to speak, up into the van beside them just as the door slammed. A moment later, an engine started up. Bonaparte settled down on one of the benches that ran along the side of the van and scrunched his legs to make room for the others. Eddie was not feeling very happy, but she tried to smile. At least Bonaparte seemed to have recovered from the embarrassment of his peculiar performance. Augustus was muttering to himself. I was promised a sports car. Come on, Augustus. Eddie forced another one of her smiles. We have nothing to be afraid of. As soon as the words were out of her mouth, she wondered why she had said them. After all, the other two didn't seem frightened at all. Bonaparte was excited about the sandwiches, Augustus merely indignant at the mode of transport. She was the only one who was afraid. In the front seat, Avril too jammed her foot on the accelerator and sped away. Half an hour later, the white van came to a sharp halt. The clones felt it reverse, then stop again. The back door was suddenly thrown open and an icy breeze whipped into the van. It was almost too dark now to see. Out you go! Eddie stumbled out first, followed by Bonaparte. She looked around, her eyes watering from the cold. There was just enough winter moonlight filtering through the overhanging trees to allow them to see their surroundings. They were in a large clearing in thick woods. The van had been parked outside a low, white building with a flat roof. It had no windows and a steel door. Is this your vacation home? Eddie tried to persuade her lips to smile. It's lovely. That's it, the voice came from inside the van, where Augustus was folding his paws across his chest. He stared at the building. This is where I'm supposed to live? This bunker? Forget it. He glared at them, blaming all three equally. Take me to a hotel. I am a distinguished actor. This place is not fit for a dog. Augustus, Eddie said nervously, don't be rude. Augustus swore at her and turned his back. Be not disheartened, Mr. Dog. Bonaparte peered into the van. 'Tis our new home. I don't know why you're so enthusiastic about this dump, Augustus said. Doesn't look like a place with even the most basic stew-making facilities, if you ask me. Bonaparte gasped. Lady Avril, is this true? Oh, don't you worry, you'll stew all right. Relieved, Bonaparte turned back to the van. Mr. Dog, I beg thee, come inside. I shall carry thee if thou art too weary to walk. Augustus scowled. One night, he said. One night only. The thick steel door opened smoothly with a large key, and a very bright light shone out of the open doorway. Eddie closed her eyes, dazzled for a moment, but also because she was suddenly worried about what she would see. She had had such high hopes of arriving home with Avril, and she could hardly bear for them to be dashed. She opened her eyes. It was a large, white-walled, almost empty room, with 3 doors leading off it. The floor was tiled and covered in several places with thin rugs. There was a small blue sofa and an armchair. An open kitchen area displayed a kettle and a sink. A box of cookies stood on the clean work surface. Light strains of bland orchestral music filtered out of a speaker in one corner. There was a strong, rather sweet smell in the air. There was nothing wrong with it. There was also nothing right with it. How nice, Eddie said. She was relieved that it was not as bad as she had been anticipating, although it did feel a little, clinical. It was cold, too. No sign of a fire to warm their freezing bones. The thought of Lionel's cozy and cluttered little home popped into her mind, but Eddie quickly pushed away this memory. There was no point in thinking of the past. Avril was their future. I'm sure we'll be very happy here, Avril. A hand was waved at her in reply. Yeah. Avril, too, had grabbed the box of cookies without offering them around and was already almost halfway through them, spraying crumbs over the hungry clones as she walked past. There was no sign of grilled cheese. Sit down. I've got a few things to do. She opened one of the 3 doors, which was numbered 237, peered inside it, closed it, wandered to another door labeled document storage, peered inside that one, and went through. "Don't come in here, any of you. It's private." She gave them a rather ghastly smile. "Back in a mo." Well, I was right. Augustus had taken up residence on the sofa. "It's a complete dump." "Come on, Augustus, it's not that bad. It's just a little chilly. Avril probably hasn't stayed here for a while, that's all." Eddie moved for the armchair at the same time as Bonaparte. Fortunately, he was so thin that there was enough room for both of them. His head was drooping. "'Tis a dreadful sight to see Mr. Dog without his creature comforts," Bonaparte sighed. "Hey," Augustus snapped. "Less of the creature." "Look, you two," Eddie rubbed her eyes. The cold was making her sleepy. "We're just going to have to deal with it, I'm afraid. If we care about Avril at all, this is where we will live, and this is where we will be happy. And we do care about Avril, don't we?" Bonaparte nodded. Augustus ignored the question. "Indeed I do, Miss Eddy, although I cannot help but think that Lady Avril is not the same as she was." "Yeah," Augustus looked at Eddie accusingly. "Me too." Eddie refused to agree. Bonaparte had said exactly what she had been thinking since Avril had arrived at the school, but she did not want to admit it to herself. This was not what she had hoped for. She had thought that finding Avril would be the sort of normal life, but she did not feel right here, and she was missing Lionel and Wilfred terribly. "Oh," she said suddenly, her eyes alighting on a telephone on the wall. "Look, you two, it's a phone." She received no reply. Bonaparte was too dejected, and Augustus had decided to ignore her. "We can call Lionel. I think I remember his phone number. It was on that funny sign outside the house." Eddie ran over to the phone and picked it up to see if it worked. It buzzed gently at her. This was an improvement. She only wished she had Wilfred's phone number, too. "Are you trying to use the phone?" Avril, too, suddenly demanded, peering around the document storage area. "No, Avril," Eddie said. Avril, too, came out and closed the door behind her, tucking a piece of paper very carefully into her pocket. "Well, don't," she said. "It's a private line anyway." She looked closely at all three of them. "You look pretty dirty. You," she pointed at Eddie, "could use some disinfecting." "Disinfecting?" "I mean a bath." Avril, too, smiled. "I have a friend I'm going to take you to see. He's very eager to meet you, but he is rather partial to hygiene. You'll need a really good shower." She handed Eddie a towel, a new bar of soap, and a large bottle of shampoo. "Through that door," she said, pointing at one of the rooms she hadn't been in yet. Eddie hesitated. "Do the other two get to have a nice hot shower, too?" "It's not really necessary for them." Augustus sniggered at Eddie. "We're not the filthy ones." "Hurry up now." Avril too pulled her toward the door. "We don't have all night. Just leave your clothes in the basket. There's a new outfit for you in there." Eddie put a hand on the door handle, uncertain of what to do. She was afraid of leaving Bonaparte and Augustus. "Will you two be all right?" "They'll be fine." Avril, too, opened the door and pushed Eddie into the bathroom. Like the living room, the bathroom was white-walled and almost empty, with the addition of a tiled shower in one corner. Eddie looked back at the door. She was suddenly tempted to run out, seize the other two, and escape into the forest. But what would Avril think? Eddie was clinging to the hope that she was just in a strange mood. She would become the Avril they had first met soon enough, wouldn't she? Eddie began to undress for her shower. Outside, Avril, too, turned to the others, her eyes stone cold. "Now for you two. In there," she barked, jerking her thumb toward the third door, labeled 237. "How dare you take that tone with me?" said Augustus. "That's no way to speak to one of imperial heritage, Crump face." Avril, too, took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her words were honey-coated. "Go through that door, please." "That's more like it." Augustus got up. "I hope for your sake," he said, that the room is much more comfortable than this one. Come on, Boney. Oh, he stopped. One more thing. I like to be awakened with a hot cup of tea at 10 o'clock in the morning. A fresh croissant will win you extra points. Bonaparte trotted behind Augustus as a smirking Avril II opened the door to room 237. Sleep tight, she said. Yikes. Chapter 16, room 237. Retchford's roads were deserted at this time of night, so Avril raced her little green convertible through the streets. It was the route she took to Leviticus every day, out of the north of Retchford, but she didn't normally travel at this speed. "Slow down, woman!" Dr. Weatherby howled, buckling his seatbelt with shaking hands as they shot past Retchford Common and hurtled toward the main street. "I'd like us to get there in one piece, if you don't mind. Well, one piece and one balding lump," he added, grasping at normality by returning to his old insults. Avril ignored his wail as she deliberately pressed her foot even harder on the accelerator. Room 237 was pitch black. It became blacker still as Avril II shut and then locked the door behind them. "Find a light switch, Boney," Augustus's voice echoed. "Sounds big in here. This is more like it, although that smell is getting worse." "I can't not find any switch, Mr. Dog." "Oh, come on, there must be one somewhere." From outside, Augustus could hear the phone ringing. It rang 3 times, then stopped. "What?" Avril II's voice came through the door. "I'm busy." "Yes, I was just about to do that." "Boney?" Augustus did not want to admit that he was afraid of this terrible darkness. "I'm starting to lose my patience." "Forgive me, Mr. Dog. Avril II's voice dropped to a whisper. "Bring the girl to you now? You want to begin experimenting on her? What's the rush?" "Well, if they ran away, they'd hardly be likely to come back on the off chance they might be able to rescue her, are they?" All right, you're the boss. I'm just the stupid clone." Augustus froze. "Are you listening to this?" he hissed at Bonaparte. "I can hear nothing, Mr. Dog." Augustus's ears were pricked up. "Don't worry. They're locked in room 237. I haven't let the stuff in yet. Yes, I'll get the girl out of the shower and drive her over to you now. I'll come back and get rid of the other 2 later." "Mr. Dog, I am exceedingly sorry, but my search for this light switch of which thou hast spoken is proving fruitless." Augustus let out a low whimper. "Oh, Mr. Dog, I beg thee, be not downhearted. I will find this switch." Bonaparte's voice moved farther away. "If it will be the last thing that I ever do." Augustus was weak at all 4 knees. "Boney!" he hissed again. "Didn't you hear that?" "Hear what, Mr. Dog?" Boney sounded cheerful. "I do not possess thy remarkable canine hearing." "She's going to kill us, Boney. She's going to experiment on Eddie, and then she's going to let out some stuff in here that will get rid of us." "This is regretful news, Mr. Dog." "Regretful news?" Augustus bounded to where Bonaparte's voice was coming from. Outside, he heard the van start up. "A slight cold is regretful news, Boney. A recently deceased pet is regretful news. Kidnapping and cold-blooded murder," he could barely speak, "that's positively wretched news. And we're not the ones receiving the news, you Napoleonic nincompoop. We are the news." "Lady Avril doth plan to murder us?" "Yes. Obviously it's been her plan all along. I knew there was something strange about her, but nobody listened to me, did they?" Bonaparte began to sob. "All right, Boney, just calm down." "I am not afeared, Mr. Dog. I am but saddened by our betrayal. I fear nothing because I am in the presence of a great hero, a dog of imperial bearing, and a bravery of which I can only dream. I know that thou wilt save us." Augustus gulped. "Me? I was sort of hoping you might have an idea." "Oh, no, Mr. Dog. I would not presume to offer my foolish ideas when thou art certain to be bursting with superior ones." quite. But if you were to offer an inferior idea, what might it be? Well, I do recall that thou didst speak of Lady Avril letting stuff in here. Surely if things can be let in, then they may also be let out. My humble suggestion is that we search for some hidden exit. I am sure that one must exist. Brilliant! Augustus was surprised. That's actually brilliant, Boney. Oh, Mr. Dog, I know that I am but a dolt compared to thee. Thou art the true genius. Well, I hardly deny that. Let's start looking then. You take one wall, I'll take the other. Groping their way through the darkness, the two clones began to inspect the walls with their hands and paws. The room was even bigger than Augustus had thought, and the walls felt very cold to the touch. In fact, they were getting colder as they made their way slowly around the room. The air was getting colder too. Mr. Dog! Bonaparte shrieked as he reached the end of the room. I have found an opening! Augustus bounded over. Sure enough, it was some sort of grill. He rattled it with his paws. Help me out here, Boney. Your fingers are just the right size for this. We need to pull this thing off. Bonaparte wrapped his spindly fingers around the bars of the grill. Augustus grabbed his jacket with his teeth. Mr. Dog, speakest thou in tongues? Augustus unclenched his teeth. I said pull, Bonaparte, pull. He bit down on the jacket again, and the two of them pulled as hard as they could. With a loud, wrenching sound, the grill came slightly loose. Then, with a rather pitiful squeak, it came off altogether. The clones tumbled to the floor. Do excuse me, Mr. Dog. Bonaparte scrambled to his feet. I did not mean to sit on thy paw. You didn't sit on my paw, Boney. Now let's see what's behind that grill. He moved toward it. The air was very cold. It must be an exit. He moved closer and peered out. Honestly, Boney, he snapped as he tripped over something underneath his left paws. Move your big feet. 'Twas not my foot, Mr. Dog. Bonaparte's voice came from the right. The shock that hit Augustus at this moment was not so much from the blue as from the depths of horror. He realized what he had tripped on. It must be one of room 237's previous victims. Boney, his voice was very small, I think we should get out of here as fast as we can. He scrambled through the space and found himself inside a small metal compartment. There was a hole about the size of a small coin in the back. He tapped at the metal. It felt very thin and was slotted into narrow grooves without the need for screws. I think we can break through this. I'm going to put my paws against the sides and you reach through and push me hard as you can. The smooth metal was as paper thin as he had suspected, and once dislodged from its grooves, had nothing to keep it in place. In fact, if he had known just how easily it was going to come loose, Augustus would not have asked Bonaparte to push so hard. Yow! He shot out into the night and landed somewhat painfully on his rear end. I'm coming too, Mr. Dog. A moment later, Bonaparte clambered through to join him. Okay, Augustus sprang to his feet. We've got to get out of here. And rescue Miss Etty surely, Bonaparte said. He was already shivering with cold. Augustus checked himself. Yes, of course. That's what I meant. He peered around the side of the building. The white van was already gone. But how? Avril drove her away in the van, and it was too dark to see tire tracks. Canst thou utilize thy canine powers of hearing and smell? What on earth are you talking about? Surely a powerful olfactory and auditory prowess is common to all dogs. Indeed, thou didst exhibit it thyself only moments ago. All dogs? Don't be ridiculous, Boney. But Augustus was looking interested. Any such skill that I have is no doubt a special gift bestowed upon me by my great ancestors. Bonaparte looked impressed. No doubt, Mr. Dog. Augustus sniffed deeply. Yes, I can smell something familiar. This is incredible. I'm a marvel, really, I am. Still sniffing, he pointed a paw past the building and through the thick trees. They went this way. Let's go. Okay, we'll stop there for now. I will see you next time. Bye.